Well, the big question coming into the season was, will the Pac teams have to adjust to the Big Ten Conference? Will the Big Ten teams be able to continue their physicality, or will they have to adjust to the Pac teams? And now we're 4 weeks into the season, and we're starting to get some of those questions answered. Of course, the majority of the story has yet to be told, but based on what we have this first 4 weeks, I want to dive into my power rankings, my thoughts on this season so far. First things first, though, if you're new here, welcome to the Big Ten Show. This was started by myself and my co-host, Sonny Verma from Locked On Illini. I'm over for Nebraska football, the voice of college football, and we're here to bring you everything in Big Ten. We started this channel in January, had about 30 videos, and then got it to 1,000 subscribers, and then had some stuff come up. He had to move, and a lot of personal stuff coming up, and so we are getting this channel back jump-started. We started it last week in the Illinois-Nebraska game. Thought this was a perfect time to reintroduce the power rankings and get you up to date with where we stand on everything. Now, roast me in the comments. I know power rankings are very subjective. I'm going to try to give my argument for each and every ranking here. If you like it, if you don't, please drop your comments. All opinions are welcome. I will be responding to all of them. So, and if you don't mind dropping a like, and also subscribing to the video if you want to stay up to date on the latest and greatest in the Big Ten. And we got a lot of stuff coming for y'all in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. But let me go ahead and get into my power rankings here. And as you can see them on the screen, you probably have already formulated your agreements and or disagreements. But let me go ahead and give you kind of my rundown. Here's why I think I have each team where they are. And if I could pull up my notes here, that'd be fantastic. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and start at the top with Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State, of course, they were the juggernaut coming into this season. Ohio State spent the most money in the portal. Of course, Ohio State each and every single season is a championship contender. You have a team where their coach, Ryan Day, seems to be, quote unquote, on the hot seat every single season that they don't win a national championship. Ohio State has had an easy schedule, I understand, up until this point. Hasn't had to prove too much, but they've handled business. They've done well doing so. And we'll start to kind of see a little bit more of Ohio State as they enter Big Ten play. But they were number one entering the season for me, so I can't knock them off of their number one spot just yet. Now, moving to number two, Penn State. Penn State, you have Andy Kotelnicki there, been great so far in terms of his fit. With this team, they averaged over 530 yards per game so far. And I think the biggest thing for me is watching Drew Aller. Drew Aller mechanically year over year, you look at last season's stats, very efficient. It's hard to be upset with the lack of turnovers, the touchdown to interception ratio. He's an efficient passer, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. However, you can tell he has developed not only mechanically, but mentally. It seems like he is doing a good job of spreading the ball around. He is making good decisions. He's got calm feet. Looks like he has a calm mind in the pocket as well. And that's allowing him to be able to really get this offense into a good flow. So far, the pass rush has been excellent for the defensive side of the ball. But the biggest thing is the offensiveness, the explosion on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to need to continue that. Drew Aller is going to have to continue to be efficient because, again, there are still some things in this Penn State team that will, in my opinion, if the top three teams in this conference are playing at an elite level, I still think Penn State falls third into that category. However, they are starting to get the wheels rolling in things, and Penn State's looking like they're moving in the right direction. I really like this Penn State team. This will be a good test for them when they play Illinois. So that's a matchup I'm really, really looking forward to, and I'll get into Illinois in just a second, of course. So Penn State comes in at number two. Now, Oregon at number three. I know a lot of people have their opinions about Oregon, but the way I feel about elite teams, right, is, they had a couple of early struggles, you would say, in their schedule. I think that's safe to say. But the thing about great teams is great teams, they win those games, and they go in the film room, they figure it out, and they fix it, right? And it seems like Oregon has done that. The offensive line issues have seemed to improve. Looking at the PFF numbers and just watching the film of Oregon, overall, it just seems like that offensive line is operating more as a unit. But not only that, the efficiency of the offense and the way the offense is operating is taking a lot of stress off of that offensive line. Dylan Gabriel has been excellent. Of course, they have a plethora of weapons there on that team. And defensively, they've been solid. Just got to continue to grow and continue to have that offensive line perform at a high level. But the sky's the limit with this Oregon team. This is a team that's built to compete and win a national championship, and I expect them to do pretty come pretty close to that. I'm not going to say I have them in the championship. I have Ohio State still winning this conference, but I do think Oregon can get Ohio State in that game. And if they play a couple times, I think they split them. But Oregon, just a few things that they need to work on. I just don't think they're quite as polished. But again, that team's getting better and they're starting to click on all cylinders. And who knows, in a couple of weeks, that team could be firing as one of the top teams in the country. I just think Oregon State is too good to not have turned that around, which they did. And they did it. Dang good job of it. Dan Lanning's doing a good job over there at Oregon for sure. Moving over to Illinois. Now, Illinois is a team that's very interesting because Illinois isn't a team that's going to kill you with athletes. They're not going to be a team that's going to kill you with explosiveness. What they're going to beat you with is good, solid game plan, executing that game plan at a high level. Not only that, they have a lot of experience. They're opportunistic defensively, and they don't turn the ball over, right? So you have a well-coached team that is opportunistic, doesn't turn the ball over. It's a veteran team. They make timely plays when they need to, and they're highly efficient, right? And in the Nebraska game, that showed, right? What they did in the Nebraska game was they came out with an effective game plan. And I, as a Nebraska fan, I watched that game and I saw a really good Illinois team that came out there, and what they did was they really wanted to make sure that they stretched Nebraska's defense out wide by hitting hitches and out routes on the outside. They wanted to open up, and even though they haven't had much of a run game in this season, they still wanted to invest heavily in that run game to give you that look and to be able to, then throw off of it and keep the linebackers on their heels. And they did a great job of that, and that's why they were able to go in there, expose Nebraska's defense, and get a huge win on the road. And so Illinois comes in at 4 for me, mainly because they have a top 25 win on the road in the Big Ten. They're 4-0, and for all intents and purposes, Luke Altmaier is doing what he needs to do. He's doing a very good job of just managing the game effectively, but making some pretty good throws when he needs to. But that game plan, Bielema's got them coached up well. They tackle well. Defensively, they have cornerbacks with ball skills. Dylan Rozier, the number 28, the linebacker there, is excellent. Dennis Briggs Jr. on the D line is excellent. So Illinois is going to be a tough team for anybody to beat. But Penn State and Illinois, again, that game is going to be a really fun game to watch, to see who rules the day. Is it that Penn State team that has more talent and explosiveness, or is it this Illinois team that plays really well together, is really well coached? We'll see. We'll see how that plays out, but that's an interesting matchup there. Now, Rutgers was one of my darlings of the offseason. And turns out, as the offseason went along, everybody kind of got on board with Rutgers. And, one of the things about Rutgers that's their hallmark is the physicality. It's a New Jersey style of football that they play, and even at the high school level. And Greg Schiano is just, as we know, the perfect fit for that Rutgers team. Excellent coach. I had him top 10 in my coaching rankings overall for the season. So, the thing about them is, they have Ethan Kaliakmanis, and Ethan Kaliakmanis, say what you will, right? He's not a world beater at quarterback, but he doesn't have to be, right? I can tell you firsthand, Ethan Kaliakmanis is 2-0 versus Nebraska. So it doesn't matter if you're not a world beater, right? He's being efficient, 6 touchdowns to 1 interception at a 62% completion percentage and a 39th ranked QBR in the country. All right. 9 yards per attempt, which is his highest in his career. And it's coming because they got Kyle Monungai coming off the legs of Kyle Monungai, 6.3 yards per carry, make Kaliakmanis' life that much easier. Rutgers, front 4 does need to get better. They don't generate a lot of pass rush. They don't generate a lot of sacks. 104th in sacks at only 1.33 per game, 4 on the season, but they are 35th in total defense. So they're a good tackling team. They are a team that, is very physical and wants to beat you with their physicality. They want to wear on you. And I think Rutgers is a really good team. It's going to be hard to beat, but they do need to get better at generating that pass rush against some of these quarterbacks, because some of these quarterbacks in the Big Ten right now are operating at a very efficient level. And if you don't get some pressure onto them, it's going to be a long day at the office. So moving over to Michigan at 6. Now, Michigan, I actually picked Michigan to beat USC last week, 27-24 on the Big Ten team rivalry show. So, Michigan is a team that I thought coming into the season, of course, most of us should start Alex Orji. And while I know Alex Orji doesn't give them the ability to move the ball through the air, the way this Michigan team is designed right now, I think their best interest, and turns out that was the case, is to, get behind Orji, use the physicality that they have, and try to wear teams down, because I mean, you can't force a passing game that isn't there. You don't have a quarterback who can effectively throw the ball either way. Orji is going to have to get much better at least being able to get in some kind of a rhythm. They're going to have to move the pocket and try to find some short hitting throws to be able to get him in a rhythm and try to run that run game off of his try to run that pass game off of his legs. But again, I just think the way they attack, the way this culture is in Michigan, I think they can win games based on just the fact that they are, a winning culture. Sharon Moore is, in my opinion, a good coach. It's just right now, of course, the quarterback position is kind of a pain in a thorn in their butt, if you will. So Orji's going to have to get that together, but the scheme is going to have to be there. They're going to have to scheme Orji up to be able to get some passing offense going. Otherwise, it's going to be rough. Teams are going to pin their ears back, but Michigan's solid. Solid across the board defensively, top defensive back in the country. So, they have a good team, just very one-dimensional, as we know, and that could be a thorn in people's side, but Michigan's going to win some games. So wear them down, get physical, control the clock. That's going to be their style. Old school Big Ten West football. I mean, they were in the Big Ten West, but it's Big Ten West football, right? Don't turn the ball over. Doesn't matter how many points you score. Just score more than the other team, control the game, and control the clock. Now, moving on to Indiana. Indiana at 7 is a big story in the Big Ten. Coming into the season, Curt Cignetti, he had a lot of transfers in from James Madison, which, Indiana to me was a team that I said in our first power rankings videos offseason is a team that could be last in the Big Ten or they could have the most upside in the Big Ten. And so far, Indiana, albeit with not a very strong schedule, has done what they needed to do. They took care of business. They're a hard team to root against. It's fun to see Indiana playing at a high level. So one of the things, though, their physicality. I'm curious to see how their physicality holds up when they get into Big Ten conference play. That still remains to be seen. So I'm not sure how physical Indiana team or an Indiana team is, or an Indiana team that is off of a bunch of James Madison transfers. Take nothing away from them. I just want to see them tested with that physicality and see how they hold up. And then, so far, Curtis Rourke, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns to no interceptions at 75% passing. I mean, you can't ask much more from your quarterback position. They have a solid group at linebacker. Mari Farrell, the rover that they have on that side of the ball, because their defense transitioned from a 4-2-5 over to a 4-3, but they still have some positions. Like the rover is a 3-3-5/4-2-5 position, and basically what it is, it's kind of a hybrid role where you have a guy who's kind of playing a hybrid defensive back, just kind of a little bit over. So in the 3-3-5 especially, they have a jack and a rover. Depends on where you're at, what they call it. But in this instance, they have a rover on Indiana. And again, sophomore Mari Farrell has been excellent. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And Brian Haynes, the defensive coordinator, he was great at James Madison, transitioned this defense over from a 4-2-5, like I said, to a 4-3, and hasn't missed a beat. They have this other position that I saw where their weak side defensive end is 70% defensive and 30% linebacker. So he's a 70% defensive, rush type of player, and 30% a linebacker. So that almost operates kind of like a jack role. A jack in a 3-3-5 is a hybrid / edge rusher linebacker type of role. So it's interesting how they have those nuances of a 4-2-5, 3-3-5, and a 4-3. So, but it's working out very well. It's given them versatility. Of course, that extra, being able to add in that extra defensive back adds that element of speed to keep up with the spread offenses. So interesting to see how this plays out. But allowing under 200 yards per game defensively, hard to be mad at anything Indiana has done or criticized so far. So there's where Indiana falls in for me. USC coming in at number 8. USC fans, don't get mad at me. I love your team, right? I love USC right now. This is just the power rankings. This is where I have them based off of the loss to Michigan. And Indiana undefeated, Rutgers, Illinois undefeated. Michigan has the head-to-head win. Now, USC, bright future. I love Miller Moss as a quarterback. I loved him coming into the season. He has done nothing to discourage me from that. Deanton Lynn's defense is just excellent. I mean, they're playing at a very high level compared to what we saw last year. But the thing is, I think, of course, this USC team needs to, it's a first-year defensive coordinator. They're going to get some more players in here to fit the system. They're going to get a little bit more physicality under their belt. I was a little bit hesitant. The reason I picked Michigan to beat them, last week was because I wasn't sure how good LSU was. LSU, for all intents and purposes, week 1 was ranked in the preseason rankings, come out and lost to USC. Preseason rankings are what they are. So I wasn't ready to run away with that. And then we saw how LSU performed. I believe it was South Carolina, that for all intents and purposes they should have lost to. But I'm not trying to take away anything away from USC, but that's kind of how we have to, gauge things this early in the season, try to compare opponents and see how their opponents do, to see how good they are. And why I think USC is very good. And I think USC is a dark horse playoff contender, and their defense is going to get better as the season goes along. I just have them at 8 currently. But yeah, 47th in total defense. I mean, it's hard to be upset at anything USC is doing. And I don't really anticipate probably seeing USC much lower than this as the season goes along. So moving on to Nebraska. Now, Nebraska have been at 9 right now, coming off of the loss to Illinois. Some of the concerns that I have for Nebraska, coming out the first 3 weeks against UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa, they did things very well. They didn't turn the ball over. They were doing what we asked of them, and it's controlling the game offensively and letting your defense kind of do the work for you, but not having your offense turn the ball over. Now, as the season has gone along, of course, I mean, it's shown that Raiola has the ability to do more than just manage the game. The problem is right now for Nebraska, in my opinion, is we don't have an offensive identity is what I'm saying, but I'll explain it a little bit more. Against Illinois. Illinois had an effective game plan, and they had a rhyme or reason. They went in there and they came in there and they had this ability to be able to run a lot of formations, very similar formations, but to run a lot of plays off of them. And it seemed like every time they needed to reach in their pocket and have a play ready, they were ready to have a play off of 12 personnel formation that they had before, off of the trap. They snuck 85 out there. They snuck 94. All of those things were set up when I went back and watched the film. All of those things were set up in those drives. They ran 2 plays to 85 and 4 plays right before that touchdown that they threw in the end zone. So Nebraska, what happened to them defensively on the defensive side of the ball, was when Illinois had them on their heels, there were a lot of players out of position. And when I say out of position, just a half step off of where they needed to be. So you would have a linebacker take a step up on the fake inside handoff, and then they would have over the middle of the field in a cover 2, they would just dump it over the linebacker's head, right? Or, you get them in a situation where we're protecting the middle of the field, and they throw a quick little out route to pick on the fact that Nebraska's down their top 2 corners, right? It's an effective game plan, but Nebraska needs to be able to show that when teams come in and scheme them up in game plan, they need to be able to adjust on the defensive side of the ball. That game they didn't. Right now, I want to see this team rebound. Purdue coming up this week is a good opportunity to do that. Fairly favorable schedule up until Rutgers. That'll be the next big physical test. And so for right now, Nebraska comes in at number 9 for me. Coming in at number 10, Iowa. Say what you will about Iowa. Iowa, again, coming into the season, I thought they would have a better defense than they did last year. The only difference right now is this defense has given up more explosive plays than usual. Now, offensively, they suffer from a lot of the same woes. They can't really pass the ball. Tim Lester is a great offensive coordinator, in my opinion. But Caleb Johnson has been unbelievable, right? Coming out last game, 207 yards. If he could throw the ball, this Iowa team would be a problem. But, Iowa is what they are, right? They're going to come in and they're going to be able to beat teams by playing disciplined football, not beating themselves, and kind of controlling the game. If any team can take it to them and get ahead by double digits, well, good luck, Iowa. They're going to have trouble catching up. But if they can get ahead and stay in control of the game, they're a tough team to beat, as per usual. But, again, no passing offense, a defense that's giving up explosive plays. They beat Minnesota pretty handily, but Minnesota is what they are. But Iowa, Iowa's a solid team. I don't care what anybody says. It's just they're Iowa. That's the best way to put it. So they come in at 10. Washington coming at 11. So Washington will have a good test against Rutgers to see where they're at, of course. Now, the thing about Washington is there's been some sloppy execution and lack of discipline at times, but Will Rogers has stepped in nicely. He's been pretty efficient. Getting help from Jonah Coleman, his running back. And, maybe the Rutgers lack of a pass rush, can let Will Rogers stay clean and be able to get into a rhythm. And I think, Washington, for them defensively, they've been really good. They need to continue to get pressure, but, they need to have a good run defense when they go against Kyle Monangai to be able to really, I think Rutgers physicality is what's going to be the toughest thing for Washington to face. And this to me is going to show us, I think, where Washington is in terms of the Big Ten Conference, because their one loss being, of course, to Washington State. I still think we don't quite fully know what Washington is. I think they're a well-coached team, but I do think that they will consistently improve. Just hard to know what they are as it currently sits. They lost a lot of players. I lost a lot of players. So the fact that they are where they are, losing as many players and losing their coach, everything that happened this offseason, them to be sitting at 11 right now with a chance to climb if they can beat Rutgers is a pretty good situation to be in. So Washington for that is going to come in at 11 for me. Number 12, Michigan State. Now, Michigan State, again, one of the darlings of last season. Aiden Childs coming in, a lot of hopes for him, but he's struggling a little bit, a little bit. 54% completeness passes, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They're running the ball for over 150 per game. Karen Lynch Adams is doing a great job running the ball there. Their physicality is there. They are a solid team defensively. Just right now, Michigan State has, they're behind the curve in terms of talent and execution across the board. A lot of flaws, not only, across the team, but Aiden Childs really needs to clean up his efficiency for Michigan State to really be able to kind of, climb these rankings. Childs, say what you will, Michigan State is a team that's growing and is a team that's going to get better as the years go along. But Michigan State at the same time, they are what they are. They're competing with Michigan for recruits and stuff like that. So I do think Michigan State currently sitting, they do have, an excellent staff. They have an excellent future potential in terms of just where I think they stand currently. And I think if they can pull off a couple upsets this season, maybe, make some, maybe make some noise in terms of the recruiting range. I think their coach is good enough. I think the staff is good enough to have them as a pretty sneaky good team in this conference in the coming years. So I would love to see Michigan State climb up these rankings a little bit more. I do like Aiden Childs as a quarterback, and I want to see him succeed. So Michigan State comes in at 12 for me. Coming in at 13, Maryland. Now, Maryland coming in had a quarterback battle this offseason, between 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Billy Edwards took over, 75% completion percentage on the season, 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's 3rd in the country in big time throw percentage. But he likes his one target, Ty Felton, 604 yards and 5 touchdowns to Ty Felton. So Billy Edwards not spreading the ball out a ton, and that's something that you would like to see. You would like to see a quarterback who's efficient to many different players and passing the ball across the field. You don't want to get too caught up on one. Now, defensively, it's pretty bad. Michigan State coming over had 484 offensive yards and 7 yards per play against Maryland. So Maryland right now is a team that's, last year it was weird. They went on a good stretch and then they went on a bad stretch. Okay. So Maryland is just a team that I feel like 13 is the perfect spot for Maryland, just because it's a team that they do things specifically one way. And when I say that, means what Billy Edwards is going to come in there and do. He's going to come in there and he's going to target Ty Felton. And he's going to try to beat you over the top. Now, defensively, Maryland is very, very leaky, to put it nicely, and has the ability to give up a lot of explosive plays as well. So it's one of those things where it's like Maryland's not going to be able to spread the ball out and beat you and be able to game plan you and out execute you at every single level, but they do have the ability to be sneaky explosive and be able to beat you on any given Saturday potentially. So Maryland comes in at 13 for me. Now, when I say beat you on any given Saturday, I'm not talking to you, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, etc. Okay, so calm down. Moving on to 14, we have Wisconsin. Now, Luke Fickell, coach I love. I wanted him at Nebraska this offseason before we had Rule. Now, I'm kind of happy we ended up with Rule, but Wisconsin right now is a team that struggles to not only generate offense, but to finish drives. And that is a bad recipe. Now, of course, losing the starting quarterback, Van Dyke hurts. So that's, going to be something they're going to have to figure out as the season goes along. Fickell's got his hands cut out for him and how he's going to coach this team around that. But they're struggling a lot all over the place right now. And like I said, I love Fickell, but I do think he has his work cut out for him. And, what he did at Cincinnati, some people sneak in the conversation of is Wisconsin too big of a program? Is this too big of him? Is he more of a Cincinnati style of coach? I'm not going to go there just yet. Year 2, we want instant success from these coaches. It's year 2 in a new system, new coach. I'm going to give him more time, but Wisconsin right now sits at 14 for me. Now, I just realized I misnumbered. Minnesota's at 15, not 16. So Minnesota coming in at 15, Max Brosmer, he was the big thing coming into the season. How was he going to play? Ethan Kalik-Manis, of course, left to go to Rutgers, but Brosmer has been decent in terms of completing the ball, but he's turned it over 3 times in the last 2 games. They're also 120th in explosive plays. So they're the opposite of Maryland in terms of how their offense runs. Darius Taylor's been the one bright spot on this team offensively, and their passing defense has been good. Outside of that, everything else is pretty bad. Opening week, close game to North Carolina. They lost that game, and North Carolina ended up 70 points. I think they gave up. I'm drawing a blank on who they gave it up to now. 70 points they gave it. Was it James Madison? Can't quite remember. Probably should have looked it up. But Minnesota's just not a good team. They're not a good team right now. Luke Fickell. The row the boat guy. PJ Fleck. I'm sorry, Fick. I cannot believe I'm so upset that I missed Fickell. I apologize. Fleck. F and F, whatever. Fleck just gave up 207 yards to Caleb Johnson. I don't know what Fleck is in terms of a coach, but I think what Minnesota is what PJ Fleck is, if that makes sense. I think Minnesota is a team that will hover between the 5 to 8 win range in terms of with PJ Fleck as it currently sits in this Big Ten, if he continues to be their coach. But I don't see much outside of that for Minnesota. Minnesota's not a team with a lot of upside right now. They're not a fun team to watch. And yeah, I would put them lower if I could, but they're coming at 15 for me. 16 at Northwestern. Now, Northwestern's a team that we want to root for. Rooting for them last year. Now Northwestern's a well-coached team. They just really they lack the talent right now and the resources needed to compete with a lot of these teams. Offensively, the pieces aren't there, but defensively, their coaching is showing up. They've been sound defensively with the tackling, and this is all things considered with their talent, just in terms of how efficiently they tackle, and just overall, just watching them on the tape and just seeing them schemed out. They're a well-coached team, and Northwestern just kind of is what they are. They are a team that's going to, they're going to get a new stadium and stuff like that. We'll see, but this is a team that is probably destined to be towards the back of the Big Ten, although we would love to see Northwestern climb up and be at the top of the Big Ten at some point. It'd be nice to see a change for a little bit, but Northwestern comes in at 16 for me. Now Purdue coming in at 17. Purdue is a team, Ryan Walters, say what you will, they've struggled. Good recruiting class last year, but overall this team so far has not looked good. Defensively, watching their film in preparation for the Nebraska game this weekend, not a lot of speed, very, very poor tackling on the defensive side of the ball. Very poor tackling, very poor pursuit angles. And just overall, they do have some experience. Number 4 at linebackers, a really good, I seen him making plays out there, but the thing about him is he's a big guy and not very quick, right? So team speed just lacks all over the field. Coaching lacks. The Purdue's not a good football team all around. Hudson Card is experienced, but that offense still is not good. They really can't get together offensively, defensively, coaching. I can't figure out quite what this Purdue team is right now. I never really saw Ryan Walters as a good coach. Not a big fan of Ryan Walters in general. So Purdue is going to come in at number 17 for me, only ahead of number 18 at UCLA. And I will say UCLA was a team that we expected to be towards the tail end of this conference, and it has proven to be so. Deshaun Foster coming in as a head coach that we knew didn't have experience as a coordinator or as a coach, so he was going to have his hands full. Big Ten Media Days came. He said what he said, but we're like, okay, he's a football coach, right? Let's see how he coaches. So far, UCLA has been where what I would like to say efficiency goes to die right now. UCLA is – Deshaun Foster we'll give them a couple more years and just see where UCLA is right now. Of course, they hung in the first half with LSU. Take that for what you will, and then got shut out in the second half. So, I mean, Deshaun Foster seems like a guy who can get, the players rallied behind him and get effort out of his guys. But I just think it's a poorly talented football team that has a bad culture, bad execution. I just think they're way behind the curve on where they need to be in terms of everything. And for that reason, I have to put them right behind Purdue. As much as I hate to, UCLA comes in at number 18 for me. Now, that'll do it for my Big Ten power rankings. Now, leave your agreements and or disagreements down below in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'll be responding to all of them. And again, if you stayed to this part of the video, please drop a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the video. And welcome to the Big Ten Show. With that being said, we'll see you in the next video. Peace.